Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, Alex Tamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, what I'm doing here today is talking about the U.S. House Representative from Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, Ilhan Omar, and her March 23rd speech before the Council of American Islamic Relations, better known as CARE. Grounded in her belief that Muslims are being treated as second-class citizens in America, Ilhan made an apparently tone-deaf observation during her 21-minute speech that the 9/11 attacks amounted to some people did something. This made headlines, especially after some conservative politicians pounced. But notice, I said her remark was apparently tone-deaf because I detect something deliberate here. Can you guess what that is? Texas Representative Dan Crenshaw said in a tweet, "First member of Congress to ever describe terrorists who killed thousands of Americans on 9/11 as some people who did something. Unbelievable." President Donald Trump afterwards posted a video of the demolition of the Twin Towers as backdrop to Ilhan's words, "some people did something," which led Ilhan and her supporters to accuse Crenshaw and the president of encouraging death threats to be made against her, which predictably led to Omar supporters taking to the streets with signs and onto Twitter with a digital rally under the hashtag #WeStandWithIlhan. However, if you think the statement "some people did something" was not a piece of carefully crafted rhetoric that achieved the desired effect, I can get you a really great deal on the Brooklyn Bridge and throw in the George Washington Bridge if you act today. The news media said Ilhan's comment, "some people did something," was taken out of context. Fair enough. I rose to the challenge and actually watched her entire speech for the context. I watched it more than once, actually, and I can state with certitude that the exact quote is, CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. The first part of that statement is factually incorrect. CARE was founded in 1992, same year the Omar family immigrated to the United States from Somalia. Ilhan's Wikipedia page, noting the gaffe, slapped a nice little fig leaf on it by saying that many Muslims joined CARE after 9/11. The second part of that quote about losing access to civil liberties is a vital standalone topic, serious enough that it should extend beyond the experiences of this or that individual ethnic group. Mainstream media's elision of this from the quote says a lot about broadcast journalism's gutless nature, because they'd rather run with the poor Ilhan is being targeted spin than anything she said in her March 23rd speech. We'll get into that later. Using the Christchurch mosque shooting from 8 days earlier as a frame of reference, her sunny disposition reinforced by saying things like, "I also want the light so I can see your beautiful faces," and "love Trump's hate," Representative Ilhan Omar went into a grievance-based speech that began as an attack on President Trump. Ilhan quotes the president as saying, "Muslims hate us." Now, I know Donald Trump has made numerous statements that are construed as Islamophobic by the people who loathe him, many of these statements made before he was president. But does he really hate Muslims? Donald Trump may not be the most eloquent off-the-cuff speaker I've ever heard, but was he talking about all Muslims, as Ilhan would lead us to believe, or Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and radical Islam in general? See, I don't really care what Donald Trump says or how he says it. I care about what he does. And I would ask Ilhan this. Did Donald Trump say Muslims hate us before he went on his first presidential visit to Saudi Arabia, where he put his hands on the glowing glass globe, or after? Did Donald Trump say Muslims hate us before he invited Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman into the Oval Office, or after? Did Donald Trump say Muslims hate us before he pushed for selling billions of dollars in military hardware to Saudi Arabia, or after? If Donald Trump had said, "some people hate us," Representative Omar might have been okay with it. But I doubt it. There was also Representative Omar's mischaracterization of the so-called Muslim ban, a highly media-driven issue with its focus on protests that sprang to life in airports and other places all around the country, for the cameras, I might add, that was actually a travel ban on Middle Eastern nations whose vetting processes for travelers to the U.S. were not meeting new government security standards, a move the Obama administration had also made at one point. Unfortunately, Ilhan neglects to mention that Trump's travel restrictions to Muslim countries had some notable exceptions. Saudi Arabia was not on the list. Egypt was not on the list. Indonesia, which I believe has the world's largest Muslim population, was not on the list. Instead, there were countries like the failed state that is now Libya, a gift from the Obama administration, mostly brought to you by Hillary Clinton. Iran was on the list. No surprise there. Somalia? Well, since Representative Omar's family comes from Somalia, no wonder she wants to love the president to death.
So to me, I say raise hell. Make people uncomfortable.
Sorry, couldn't resist. No, it's mostly a victimhood speech. Ilhan informs us that American Muslims are viewed with suspicion by their fellow citizens. Since she's speaking to the hometown crowd, so to speak, this is accepted as a given with no corroborating evidence necessarily required. This allows Ilhan the latitude to bounce into a blatant bit of fear-mongering about Muslims being denied medical services because they are not viewed as fully human. At the very least, this is an insult to the honor of the medical profession in America and around the world. Because of the ethic do no harm, any hospital, any doctor, any nurse doing such a thing would have their licenses revoked. If any cop ever refused to deliver a Muslim baby in the backseat of a taxi cab, that cop would never survive the scrutiny of such an action. Hey, Ilhan, give us a little credit for being professionals around here, huh? But after saying such sweet-sounding rubbish, Ilhan then effortlessly slips into a fanciful what-if story about a high school student being sent to the principal's office for questioning a school curriculum that teaches Muslim equals terrorist. If that actually happened, I'd like to know where. If it can never be proven to have happened, Ilhan should consider a career in writing children's books after she loses her next congressional election. So we return to the words at the heart of this latest skirmish in the culture wars: some people did something. We should note that this statement is factually true. If I were some linguist and put that statement through a truth table, it would sail through like a marble swallowed by a baby. But it is also an incredibly trite statement. Imagine me saying something like Pearl Harbor. Some people did something. Again, factually accurate, but considering America's entry in the World War II and the historic events that followed, I would sound like a complete idiot. Ilhan Omar, however, is not a complete idiot. She knows exactly what she's doing. Notice what she doesn't say. She doesn't say the word jihad. She doesn't mention the name Al-Qaeda. Is that because she doesn't want to? Why would that be? I'll venture a partial guess. Is it possible Representative Omar said what she said because she had not watched the events of 9/11 in real time like I did? I was watching the Today Show on 9/11. The last guest on the show before the attacks began was Harry Belafonte. I wonder if Harry's buddy Fidel Castro was watching. The next guest up was Tracy Ullman, but news footage of a plane having crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center interceded. Later, I watched the second plane crash into the South Tower, and I knew that I was watching people die. And here's something else. Flight 93 flew over the south side of Pittsburgh, following the Monongahela River, 2 miles or so from my apartment building. If I had been standing on the roof of my apartment building at the right time and looked south, I would have seen that plane. Over the next 4 days, I only got 3 hours of sleep a night. When I was awake, all I did was sit on the couch and watch television. It was only until I started seeing TV commercials return on Friday that I got a sense that things were returning to normal. After the way my brain got fried watching Flight 175 crash into the South Tower, after everything that followed, there is no way I could ever trivialize the attacks of 9/11 or the nearly 3,000 deaths that occurred like Ilhan. Because her statement was so disrespectful, Representative Ilhan Omar's "some people did something" got the wheels turning in my head. If you've taken time to study 9/11 and viewed its effects globally, you should know how the Middle East thinks about the attacks. I asked a friend of mine who had lived in Egypt what the Muslim world believes happened on 9/11. He said, they think it was an inside job. That's the general view. The specific view is, the Mossad did it. I said earlier that there was something deliberate in Ilhan's words. What's deliberate is this. She's not talking to the American people, she's talking past them. Don't kid yourself. As the first Somali naturalized American citizen to be elected to the United States House of Representatives, her words have global reach. And I guarantee you that "some people did something" played over and over again in the Middle East. It was meant to. She's a superstar over there. On the cover of Vogue Saudi Arabia, Sometimes things unsaid are louder than things which are. Ilhan Omar does not speak the name Al-Qaeda. And like I pointed out, the Islamic world does not wish to believe Al-Qaeda was behind the 9/11 attacks. An old 9/11 truther like Alex here, who believes in his heart of hearts that 9/11 is an insufficiently investigated crime, wonders if he's looking at someone who at some basic level shares his views. Here is where the failure of big stinking corporate mainstream media comes in. Nobody in broadcast journalism had the integrity to ask Representative Ilhan Omar who she thinks the "some people" were. That's because broadcast journalism doesn't want to know. Was Representative Omar dog whistling an Islamic world that doesn't buy the United States government's official account of what happened on 9/11? Is the U.S. representative from Minnesota's 5th Congressional District hiding the fact that she's a secret 9/11 truther? Well, if she is, she's got some nerve when she says during her speech, "I speak the truth." Here, I'm not talking about the words she says, I'm talking about the words she thinks. If Representative Ilhan Omar was a vocal 9/11 truther in the manner of Alex Jones, would she have ended up on the covers of Time magazine, Newsweek, or the Rolling Stone? I think not. If Chuck Todd had Representative Ilhan Omar on Meet the Press and asked her directly who she thought these "some people" were, would Ilhan say Al-Qaeda? And if she said no or waffled on her answer, her media attention would dry up in a flash. When it comes right down to it, big stinking cowardly corporate media has thrown its arms around her. That they are giving her a pass on the 9/11 comment is as obvious as missing front teeth. If, as has been said, Muslims are under no obligation to tell infidels the truth, some people somewhere in the Muslim world might be saying, "Foolish Americans."